Tonight, some bonus time with the governor. And who doesn't want bonus time with the governor? Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. Thank you very much for tuning in on this beautiful Tuesday evening in the spring. We've got kind of a special, I don't know if it's a special conversation, but you remember that Governor Raimondo was here a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about a bunch of things. And what was interesting is that her people really wanted to have a conversation about jobs. And of course, we have editorialized here pretty often about the jobs thing from Governor Raimondo. And, you know, I thought it was important that we give her some quality time. And on television, quality time is at least 6 or 7 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun. And we just didn't have 6 or 7 minutes to talk jobs when she was with us. So we did a little bonus segment after our initial taping of the TV show, and we'll play that for you tonight. We also have her thoughts on a couple of other things, including the Taylor Swift tax, which you may have noticed in the news over the last 24 hours, has been withdrawn as a proposal, tourism, the Ed Commissioner, and a whole bunch more. So that's what we have in store tonight, so I hope that you stick around for that. Let us go to the rundown and preview the other stuff that we have. Yes, I have some crisis management advice for Tom Brady. Maybe he'll take it. This is just a devastating story out of East Providence, and when I saw the headline today, it caused me to have quite the conversation on the radio, and I think we got to pursue. We'll talk about it. It really is in so many ways, and Tim White has found a new way to make it clear that this legislature is embarrassing with his experiment of sorts on campaign finance post the Gordon Fox saga. I'll point to that. And this was just too bad. John Solona, you'd have to be a longtime radio listener to understand that. Remember My Sharona? Bum, 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 bum. Anyway, I used to sing John Solona all the time when we were just having a field day with him, even before he got jammed up as a state senator. But what happened to him yesterday in the news coverage that he is dealing with, it's just wrong. It's just not right. What is right is that the CVS field is beginning to come together, and Brad and Billy, Faxon and Andrade, of course, have announced at least the first 8 members of the invitees, some regulars, some not so, as June will be around the corner any minute now. Of course, your state of mind is important to us, and we'll get to you and ask for your feedback as well. So, you know, the top story is Tom Brady. There seems to be a little bit of Brady exhaustion going on right now, but I got my own thoughts on how he ought to handle this. Here's the headline, as if you didn't know. Tom Brady has been suspended for 4 games. The Patriots punished. Here's an Eyewitness News summary of the story, and then we'll kind of get into what my suggestions are for Mr. Brady.
The NFL suspending the 4-time Super Bowl champ and reigning Super Bowl MVP with a 4-game suspension for being at least generally aware of the inappropriate activities. Does this taint your opinion of him at all?
Oh, no, of course. No, he's the greatest of all time. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely not.
You'll still go and support him? And
Oh, yeah, even more, because I don't think he did it.
But the NFL relied on the 243-page Wells report, which found it is more probable than not the New England Patriots personnel participated in violations of the playing rules. On top of the Brady 4-game suspension, the Pats were slapped with $1 million fine and the loss of a first-round draft pick next year and a 4th-rounder in 2017.
All right, so look, you know, I'm interested in crisis management as a business. I have my own private little company that does communications work, and from time to time I do market consulting, and I offer political advice from time to time. I certainly offer it here all the time. I don't offer any political advice to people in Rhode Island for compensation, I can promise you that. But I do that kind of work. And I was thinking, you know, what would Tom Brady want to hear? Now, he's got an agent that's screaming bloody murder for him. Bob Kraft, the owner, is in there behind him, supporting him. But it's all antagonistic right now with the NFL. And say what you want about the NFL. I think the NFL is overcompensating with this penalty, no doubt. I think the probability that Tom Brady was involved in you know, changing the status of PSI, pounds per square inch on a football, is, you know, awful tough to whack a guy for. But remember, this is not the court of law. This is not the criminal justice system. This is the private organization known as the NFL. And for the most part, although they are on a very public platform, they can do what they want. So I was thinking, you know, Tom Brady has a national future, not just a New England future. Of course, there's very strong differences between the national and the local audience in terms of how they view this story, right? Depending if you're a Patriots fan or not. But Brady needs to find a way to become well, if he wants a legacy to defend, and he doesn't want to be referred to as a cheater, which is happening chronically here, it seems to me that he still has a chance to take some ownership of this story. So here are some of my thoughts, advice for Tom. First of all, Tom, admit that you were traveling 65 and a 55, meaning you know that there's a 2-pound differential on the football, pounds per square inch, right? You know that you like it a little softer. You know that you got some guys that are loyal to you in the Patriots organization. And you know that that you weren't looking to cheat, but that you were looking for the competitive advantage. Steve, come on back to me. So the concept here is, you know, when a pitcher rubs up a ball, that ball is going to get rubbed up very differently than the next pitcher does, right? He can certainly make that argument and say, look, now that I think about it, I'm a little over the top here. So go back to the list. Now you say, apologize for perceived obstinance, because between he and his agent, there's an obstinance here. Now, look, he didn't hand over his cell phone records. He didn't even give his cell phone over. He had the option to just pick some texts with these two guys in the organization and give that to the NFL, and he chose not to. I understand the privacy concerns with texts and emails, but he's got to go back and revisit that and say, you know what, look, you can have my conversations, and you can see why, you know, I'm 65 and a 55. And at that point, go back to point number 3 here, you tell the agent and Kraft to just knock it off. The agent's going to advocate aggressively in public for the athlete because that's what he's paid to do. But the caustic thing that's going on out there right now is not good for his overall reputation. And Bob Kraft is just being loyal to his guy. He can say, listen, guys, enough. I'm taking ownership of this. And then the fourth thing he could do is say, look, the team was found not to be guilty of this whole thing. I will pay the $1 million fine on behalf of the team. And then I'm going to ask the NFL to reinstate the draft picks that have been taken, picks 1 and 4 in the next draft, without a debate on the 4-game suspension. Now, look, for you Pats fans who don't think he deserves a suspension, you don't want to give in. But I'm not talking about you or to you. I'm talking to Tom. This is the crisis management that he needs. He'll look statesmanlike. He may return, the NFL might say, you know what, in lieu of all the aggravation, we'll give the draft picks back and we'll call it a day. And then it'll be the thing he soothed versus the thing he kept fighting. Just my thought. Moving on to a situation which is wholly more, oh man, the stabbing death here. When you saw this headline today, did you feel the same way I did? Police were aware of threat hours before this murder. This breaks my heart, and it should break everybody's heart. We got to do a better job in coordinating on domestic violence. I understand that police departments are up to here with chronic, you know, instruments of law where restraining orders are being issued and constant battle is going on and threats and all. But when it gets to this level, we got to do better.
Police say Yulin Stanfield stabbed Christine Santori several times Sunday morning as she opened the back door of her apartment.
He came up behind her, and the best way to describe it would be she was ambushed, and he shoved her right in the door. We think the stabbing actually began outside on the patio, and went right into the door.
Police say Stanfield ran from the crime scene, but it didn't take them long to track him down. Police tell us Stanfield and Santori had dated for about 3 months. She had an active restraining order against him that was filed last May.
Yeah, and on Friday night of last week, she identified a text where he said, "I'm going to punch you in the face." She calls the police, identifies the police. The police, to their credit, in East Providence, are out looking for this guy, but he's homeless. They can't find him. She's a sitting duck. Somewhere along the line, even though the Supreme Court does not hold local police departments responsible for individual safety, we have got to get some programs here where, and coordination where advocacy groups are called in when things are so acute and the heat in the kitchen is that warm that you know something could happen in the next hour, 2 hours, 2 days, that kind of thing. She should have been aware that if he was threatening to come to her home and take her out, that she shouldn't have been a sitting duck there. I don't blame the East Providence Police Department for this, and I appreciate the chief being active and transparent about the idea that the police were looking for this guy. But come on, man. This is a heartbreak. We shouldn't lose lives like this, and we have to have a better net in communication when things get to this level. And if we just look at a story like this and shake our heads and say, isn't that too bad? That's not enough. God bless her. Embarrassing legislature? Yeah. I don't have the full story here because we really don't have the time for it, but you've got to go to foxprovidence.com and, of course, WPRI.com and see Tim White's latest Target 12 piece. Most lawmakers refuse to release campaign bank statements. This is outrageous. This all stems from the Gordon Fox, former Speaker of the House, and his arrest. He asserted that he had a couple of $100,000 in his campaign account when he did not, because he was spending it, allegedly. Well, he's pled guilty to it. He was spending it like a drunken sailor on himself and people around him. Nick Mattiello, the now Speaker of the House, proffered to Tim White a little while back that, you know, he'd love to have, that he could withstand an audit of his own campaign account. And so Tim White kind of took him and the entire legislature up on it. There's new legislation now that says, look, you've got to document what's in your bank account by sending your bank account to the Board of Elections to say, you know, what you say on the report is actually in the account. I say that we ought to make that bank account statement public. Nick Mattiello said, well, you know, you could audit me. Well, here's the thing. Your legislature is afraid of its own shadow. Only 24 members of the 111 that are in there right now, 112, agreed to give Tim White an accounting of what was in their campaign accounts, in their bank statements. 24 out of 110, 112? Are you kidding me? And some still commingle their accounts, like a person like Dan York personal, Dan York campaign in the same account. I mean, the stupidity and the obstinance back to back, unbelievable. You've got to see this report that Tim White did. Make sure you look it up. It's a lengthy television report, but absolutely worth your digestion. And then, of course, you're going to get a sick tummy. A disgraced legislator, John Salona, ran into it again here. This is too much. Here's the headline on WPRI.com. He's looking to have his fines lowered. He's got like $170,000 in fees, penalties, that kind of thing, from non-compliance in terms of his own campaign reports. There's also a question as to where $28,000 actually went, and there's some suspicion that he may have spent it personally, which would be a violation of law. I never cried a river for John Salona in the past, but lately it's getting tough. Look at the story.
It was supposed to be a closed-door meeting, no cameras, no reporters. Disgraced former state senator John Salona pleading to have his fines lowered in executive session at a Board of Elections meeting Friday.
What it's done to my family is terrible, and what I've done. And we declared bankruptcy. I lost my house. Lost my marriage.
After serving 2.5 years in prison, he racked up $178,000 in fines for not filing campaign finance reports. So how do we get the tape? We filed a public records request after it was revealed it should have been public right from the start because of this.
I'm just asking for a waiver and, you know, some sort of payment plan or whatever I have to do.
Fee negotiations are done in public. And as I listen to the now public cassette tape, the board's lawyer, Raymond Marcaccio, is the first to question why the meeting's private. Salona is asked to leave.
If only one thing I could ask, because I'm sure the press would have a field day with this.
No, we're not going to, yeah. We're in executive session right now.
The agenda for Friday's meeting didn't list Salona. Board members agreed Robert Cando, the executive director, allowed the meeting to be conducted behind closed doors, but Cando is not at the meeting. A board member says it's because of a conflict of interest. They discuss how it might look to the public.
If we put it into executive session and then report out the outcome, then the press is going to fall over us to justify how we did that, why we did that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
The meeting ends. The tape stops. No resolution for Salona.
This is terrible. John Salona is bargaining a private session so he can cry a river and try to get some mitigation. He gets sent into a meeting under the premise that he can talk freely. Then they say, you know what we're doing here is not right. The guy who sends him in doesn't even go into the meeting, old friends Bob Cando and John Salona. And so the sob story that he thinks is going to be private ends up being incredibly public anyway. A lot of people don't cry a river for John Salona, but I have found him, since he came out of jail, to be a fairly humble guy, and that was just wrong. And someone's head at the Board of Elections ought to roll. And finally, the CVS field is up and at 'em. The Classic is on the way, and the CEO had some things to say this morning to introduce the field.
Now, each year we're very fortunate to have some of the world's best golfers come right here to our home state, but we all know that the Charity Classic is about much more than great golf, and we're always looking for new and innovative ways to make the Charity Classic a great experience for fans of all ages. And this year we have a number of new activities.
Some of the field: Steve Stricker, Keegan Bradley, J.B. Holmes, who hits it a country mile, Billy Horschel, Bo Van Pelt, Peter Jacobson on the men's side, and Lexi Thompson and Julie Inkster on the ladies' side. By the way, if you want to improve your swing, go walk around with the ladies. Tempo is their game. State of mind is important to us. Mine is, yours is. Your suggestions on things and responses to conversations that we've had, that's how you get in touch with us. Robert posts on Facebook after the last governor visit here, suggestion: remove all the highways and make Rhode Island one big landfill. Now, Robert, that's not very constructive. Constructive thoughts, please. The governor on jobs next.
I'm running for governor to rebuild Rhode Island's middle class and to create tens of thousands of good-paying jobs.
We were able to have you on a previous program, but this is an overtime segment, and I thank you, Governor, for sticking around for it. Reason being, your folks thought it was really important for you to have a jobs conversation here. Of course, it was jobs during the campaign. There's a lot of jobs. But I'd like to have a little bit of insightful conversation on this one theme of jobs. Mm-hmm. How do you define the jobs strategy?
We've got to make it easier and cheaper to do business in Rhode Island. We have to make sure that our workers are trained with the skills that companies want today. And we need incentives. I do believe in well-placed incentives to incentivize real estate development and job creation. And examples of that in your proposed budget are? There are job creation tax incentives, there's real estate tax incentives. Here's the important point: you don't get a dime until after you've built the building or created the job. I'm revamping the way we do workforce development, where we put the employer in the middle, this is a completely different way of doing things. Instead of going to see who's unemployed and training them, we're going to go to the employer and say, tell us what you need in order to hire people, and then we're going to train them. And we're going to invite the employer in to help with the training. Okay, and so who's paying for the training? Us, the government. So there's money in the budget for some of this training. Some of it we're going to do at the community college. By the way, we're already spending tens of millions of dollars on training. We're just not getting enough out of it. So I'm saying we got to make it more outcome driven. What are we getting for the money we're spending? Also, regulatory reform. I have a big initiative around regulatory reform, making it less expensive to do business. I want to eliminate the tax that businesses pay on energy consumption. We're one of the few states in the country we actually tax commercial employers on energy. So it's a lot to do. There's no one thing. I don't believe in the silver bullet. We gotta do it all. Well, this is the thing.
And to your credit, in all of my analysis of what you've brought budgetarily to the table here, I got to give you credit for, in the campaign, saying there's no one single silver bullet. You're governing with the theme that there's no one single silver bullet. That worries me, because I've been looking for the game changer ever since I got here. I've been looking for a bullet. So I'm going to be, as a constituent, I'm going to be patient with you because we elected you, and I'm going to hope to see the metrics of moving forward start to show themselves. And I guess that would be in unemployment numbers, and I guess that would be in our own version of GDP and all that kind of thing. But here's what I don't understand.
And it's the biggest thing is jobs created that are good-paying jobs. It's not even
which is defined as what?
Rate.
What is a good-paying job?
$50,000 and above.
Okay, I can accept that. Here's what leaves me wanting. We're stuck between Connecticut and Massachusetts, and our taxation is non-competitive. If I were running for governor, you never know, someday. Kidding, maybe not. I would just put a program together that says we're open for business and we're more competitive than anybody else. It's cheaper to do business here. If my income tax is X and Y in Massachusetts, it's that much less in Rhode Island. If my sales tax is X and Y in Massachusetts and Connecticut, it's X minus here in Rhode Island. Every compatible cost to living, quality of life in those two states is less expensive here. Now, I'd have a budget challenge because I'd have to adjust spending to make that thing work, but I'd even be willing to borrow money to fill the gap, to create a whole new vacuum here of people who say, why not there? It's cheaper on every metric.
You know what I think about that?
What?
It's not enough. Look, if you're a business, and I ran a business for a long time, if businesses are only interested in cost, they're going to go to Texas, they're going to go to Florida, they're going to go to places that have lowest cost. So my view is we do need to be competitive. You know, I was happy that we now have the lowest corporate tax in New England. Our income tax is competitive. We have a problem with property taxes. I'm proposing we get rid of this energy tax on commercial users. So I'm with you. We can't be overly expensive. We have to be competitive. But businesses want much, much more than that. I have talked to dozens of CEOs of businesses in the past 3 months, and I asked them all, what's it going to take for you to add jobs here? What's your biggest complaint? They don't talk about taxes. They talk about skills. Businesses that are growing, the thing that they need is access to skilled employees that show up every day on time with the skills they need. And they want infrastructure, they want schools that work, they want a government that's honest, and they want a regulatory environment that's fair.
The last question on jobs. Do you have a number in mind when you say, hey, guess what? We've done it, at least at phase 1 and stage 1.
Number of
jobs.
Well, I'll tell you this. The number I think a lot about is 6,000, and here's why. You know, between 6,000 and 10,000 jobs, because if we could have that many additional jobs, more than what we have forecasted, it's $130 million of revenue to the state. And at the end of the day, that's the way to get rid of this deficit. Right. So 6,000 to 10,000 additional jobs.
Dan York, State of Mind, with a little time management challenge. Those other segments with the governor will appear in a soon-to-be-viewed show because we're running a little short on time. And when we come back, we'll tell you what's next coming up this week. Stay with us. The balance of Governor Raimondo's conversation with me will appear on the Thursday program 2 nights from now in front of Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee, who has a comeback story for Rhode Island business that I think you'll be very interested in. So make a note of that. Tomorrow on Dan York State of Mind, we will have a Holy Cross economics professor who has things to say about the PawSox proposal here in Providence. So stay tuned for that. And of course, we'll see you on the radio on WPRO tomorrow from noon to 3. We appreciate you watching Dan York State of Mind.